Welcome to Neal on Fire, the podcast where we talk with the innovators shaping the future of wildfire prevention, detection, and defense. Today, we are diving into something on the defense side with a company called FyreShield Solutions. And today, I'm very happy to have Greg Klund with me today from FyreShield Solutions. Greg, welcome. It was great seeing you at Red Sky. I understand that your company is building automated wildfire sprinkler systems designed to protect homes and properties when wildfire is threatening. And we look forward to hearing more about that. And let's get right into it. So, for those hearing about FyreShield Solutions for the first time, what does your company do and who do you serve?
Primarily, we are a high volume, water only residential suppression system that's fully grid independent and designed primarily for residential consumers, but it is adaptable to the commercial application as well.
So, when we talk about residential customers, are we talking about the average homeowner? Are we talking high end properties or anything in between? What's the typical customer look like?
I would say they're kind of more to the medium to high end range, only because the way the system is built, it's a little bit more on the higher side of technology, and there are costs associated with that. So we feel like the return on the investment is a little bit more on the medium end of the residential consumer, or it's evaluated on the risk that you have. And in addition to whether you've been subject to having insurance cancellation, these are all, variables to where it works for you.
Understood. Well, that leads to our next question, which is what inspired you to create this company? And was there a defining moment, something that happened where you said, I got to start this company?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're probably one of the many where the inspiration came from the campfire in 2000. My wife's family lives in Paradise, and while we had no tragedies involved with it, it just really had a high impact. And, throughout the course of what was happening, she's asking me, it's like, could you have done something about that? And we were in the infant stages of, development, and we're like, absolutely. And that's just really, kept me pushing and refining and adapting to what we have today.
So the light bulb went off and you had this idea based on the conversation that you had with your wife and obviously concern about the wildfires. But how did you go from that initial idea to a functioning system? And did you have a number of iterations that you went through before you kind of got to a final product that was ready for the market?
Like most of us that start in the industry, it isn't necessarily a full-time experiment when you start getting the light bulb going off originally. And basically a lot of the key components were part of my 35 years of experience in the irrigation and site development construction industry. So I had used multiple variations of the components, but nobody had ever put anything together in the methodologies that we did for the systems. So it was a lot of trial and error, what works, what doesn't. And the learning curve that I've had over those 7 years has just really been, almost kismet, because, our final product met every situation that came out of the LA wildfire. It was almost one of the checklists. This happened. Could you, we have that in place. Was this? Yes. It was just 7 years of fine tuning got us to a place where, we feel we're got a final product that's almost bulletproof.
So you already had a background in large scale irrigation systems. You understood a lot of the mechanics of how these things work. It sounds like maybe the challenge was to take those systems and bring them down to a smaller scale residential type system. Is that how that happened?
Absolutely. I think if you took the list of components that we use in literally somebody's backyard, their property, it would look like I was, making an order for a park or a school or a very large commercial installation. It's very, large scale material that we're downsizing into a residential property. And, a lot of the execution to operating the system is kind of where, our proprietary systems have given us that final leap into being able to execute that wildfire parameter that honestly doesn't exist in the marketplace.
So let's talk about your secret sauce as much as you're able to. What is FyreShield's core technology, and how does it work? And do you have patents on the technology?
The key component that basically distinguishes FyreShield from all of our other competition out there is the Ember active intelligent control system. And what that does is basically integrates technology, artificial intelligence into a learning system and control system that basically allows us to, for lack of better terms, coach the operations through the wildfire situation. It's not just a on-off switch or, a button on your app. It's a comprehensive management system where we can take weather and sensor data that's coming from on-site and make the best evaluations of how to plan our controls to operate during that active wildfire situation.
So is this kind of a man in the middle type of function? Do you have someone there? I'm picturing like a command center with different sensors and indicators so that they can provide real-time intelligence on what's going on and how to react. Do you have that kind of function? Is that what you offer the homeowner?
Absolutely. We kind of look at the operation component, more of the concierge approach, where once we install the system onto the property, we take over the operational responsibility of protecting that asset from that point forward. In fact, during the course of a wildfire event, we actually have protocols that have been developed for us through the fire industry for proper evacuations for our clients. It's a very emotional time that they're going through, and usually it's very short time period that they have to respond to all of these things. We already have those protocols and guidelines for them to follow, and we get them safely off the property, and we take over the management of that wildfire situation. And generally our system is operating for 27 hours. So it's a full day event for us. We get you off the property and we manage it until the event is cleared.
So you're handling the mass evacuation part of it as well. So really full cycle from doing everything to ensure that the property it has little or no damage as possible with an approaching wildfire by using your technology, alerting the residents as to what is happening minute by minute, and then providing them with guidance on evacuating as well.
Absolutely. That is, what really separates ourselves from everybody else is it's just our constant involvement in the process, from start to finish. So, it's seems like all of our clients are very pleased with what we put together, and it looks like a good game plan.
That's great. So, to your point, there are other companies that are doing this kind of thing, but it's such a new field. There's not really, to my knowledge, testing or certification. What's your company's process to basically be able to go to a homeowner and instill confidence that your system works, it's been tested, it's going to continue to operate properly throughout the life of the system?
You really brought up a very good point there, Neal. It is a new market, and there isn't a UL standard per se in what we're doing. So, a lot of it is based on what you put into it. And we've done an incredible amount of research. There's a lot of science and engineering that goes into our systems. Each system that we put together is individually designed, engineered, and stamped. We're developing a 3D hydraulic model to actually show the homeowner exactly how well it works and be able to show those precipitation rates and be able to show the comprehensive coverage that the system is providing. And another step that we're going one step further is developing a 3D environmental model simulation where we can actually take all of the data and 3D model that we have and show how it works within a wildfire environment that we can simulate with winds, directions, ground fire, canopy fire. We can do all those simulations, so how well it works before we even set one foot on the property. That's the important part, where if you are entrusting us with your asset, we're going to prove ourselves to have, a defined, engineered, stamped solution for you.
So, given the insurance crisis, how does your system help a homeowner who has either been denied insurance because they're in the WUI or a wildfire prone area, or, perhaps get a discount because they've experienced much higher rates because the insurance companies try to mitigate their risk in a very risky area? How does your system help with that?
I think we saw at Red Sky Summit through the conversations from the insurance community that they are actively starting to embrace the proactiveness that the community is having in regards to, the wildfire risk, and they are being rewarded for that. That's why we're doing a lot of what we're doing. We are creating the data. We're creating, exactly everything that they need to see to back up and support all of our claims to what we're doing. So when we design the system, we can show that data, we can show that environmental model and the hydraulic models to show its accuracy and give them what they need to support that we have, in fact, mitigated the risk for that specific property. And it's just not hearsay. And we heard that coming from the insurance. They say,
Hmm.
we're looking for the science to back up and support what we want to do in regards to either reducing the insurance rate or reinsurance.
I'm curious, your system has a level of complexity. It's got sprinklers, it's got a lot of monitoring and so forth. What happens if there's a failure? Like if some component goes down as a wildfire is approaching, is there some kind of fault tolerance? Is there a way to be able to switch over to an alternate system so that the homeowner still gets what they need?
And that is something that we've really worked out as far as how we operate the system and deal with problems of potential failures. We've worked that into the program where we have the ability to, in the event that maybe we had a spray valve that was lost for some point, it's just not operating during emergency times. We can basically overcompensate our system because we have it, the cross coverage that we have within the design can allow us to overcompensate from the operational heads to basically fill in for any head that is in some sort of default. And it's not 100% coverage, but it probably makes up to about 90% coverage, even with failure. As far as communications, we have 4 levels of communication. And with Ember in place, and it senses that the communication line is breaking down, it can basically take an assessment from the last weather and data sensor information and basically make a last minute adjustment to the autonomous protocols and basically, keep that in operation. Almost like watching a football game, the network goes out, the game still keeps going on. And that's what Ember allows us to do. So when, network comes back on, hey, we won the game. Kind of like that. We have that ability to make the last minute adjustments and keep the gameplay going on, even with the loss of communication.
However, what about the loss of power? Because you've got pumps, presumably moving the water through the sprinkler heads. What's the backup there? And then also talk a little bit about where does the water come from? Are there reservoirs? Is it coming from swimming pools? How does that work?
Every system has a backup generator because we know in every wildfire event that power does get lost every single time. Power and communications. So we've got the communication resolved. Backup generator resolves the power. Our systems, each house is designed to have a on-site reservoir to work with. It's not running off of the domestic water source. It doesn't draw from that domestic water source in emergency time. So it allows all that water to stay with first responders and doesn't need to be needed for our high volume system.
Hmm.
In addition, because it is a high volume system operating between 100 and 150 gallons per minute, we have a lot of runoff. So we've designed a proprietary drainage system to recapture and recycle up to 70% of the water being used on site. And that allows our system to run for almost 27 hours. of operation. And generally, we use a 10,000 gallon reservoir on site, and we can make that 10,000 gallons go to almost 45,000 gallons of precipitation over that course of 27 hours. So it's very sustainable. It's very water conscious in how it works. The water that is lost, that's going into raising the soil moisture of the area around. So it's basically perimeter. It's not on your house. Basically, we make sure that the house is, properly saturated. The roof lines, the soffits, the sides, plus everything around the house, including the landscape and any other property that's, within the property limits. It's going to be wet. In fact, I was just doing a test earlier this week, and it literally feels like you're coming out of a thunderstorm after it's gone through its cycle. You can feel the humidity in the air. It
Hmm.
changes everything. It's almost like creating a microclimate on your own property.
Can you share some examples or pilot projects where FyreShield has been deployed in the field?
Right now, we do have two pilot projects going on that unfortunately are under NDA, but they're
Mhm.
very large scale projects that really pushed our ideas and limits to our scalability. And this one project that we're working on it's over 80,000 square foot in size. So,
Wow.
taking the size and scale of that, the same system still applies to something of that scale and magnitude. So hopefully over the course of early 2026, we'll be able to finish those projects and be able to, do, a few more white papers in regards to the projects and what we've learned from them and how they scale from a residential side to, a 10x multiplier of the regular house.
So, what's been the most surprising feedback you've received from these proof of concepts pilots that you've been doing?
I think most people are truly amazed by what it what it looks like when it's in operation. It's hard to comprehend what really 150 gallons per minute looks like. It's just until you walk through it and feel it and just see the amount of water that's on the ground through that literally a course of 1 minute. It's just the amazement. And then really that's that aha. I really get it now because I'm standing like it literally in this thunderstorm. Um, and it just goes to show it, the primary functions, fire doesn't exist in water and water puts out fire. If we create that saturated microclimate on a property, we are going to ensure that that ember infiltration has absolutely no chance of doing any damage on the property.
So, are you advising the homeowner on kind of zone zero projects, like, in addition to installing the system, or are you taking that on? Are you taking on anything around vegetation management, or are you advising your customers on that? How does all that fit together?
Actually, Neil, I wish I had a big, number one foam finger for those initiatives. Zone Zero and home hardening, we are the biggest supporters of that. And every person that I've met with, I literally want to, be part of their initiatives because those are the first steps. That's the low fruit. That's the easy reach. We are more of high end, almost special forces. You need us when you have that high value, high risk problem that you just can't negate after everything that you've done on the list. If you still have a challenge, that's where we're there for. But certainly we don't want somebody coming to us that hasn't done any of those steps whatsoever. It feels like you're just kind of, taking the easy way out. It's like you really need to understand what that means, what all those steps provide, and be conscious of the work that you're doing, especially with Zone Zero. I'm such a big proponent for that.
So, in other words, in order for you to engage with a homeowner, they had to have accomplished those things, be zone zero, have, hardening, taken all those steps because they're looking to you to take that next step of protection. But you need to make sure that those things are in place first.
Absolutely. That's what we
Okay.
encourage 100%.
So, as you stated, you have a bit of a higher end system. And I'm wondering, what are the biggest challenges when you're dealing with customers in terms of getting their buy in of the system? It's kind of an imagine, if you will, system because it's all custom done. And, you have to try to convey the value proposition of protecting their property. What kind of feedback are you getting, and what steps do you take to try to get that acceptance from the homeowners?
I think, as I talked about previously, having those 3D models, we build a LiDAR model of the property, especially if it's an existing property, because we need to know, what the topography is of the property. We need to see what the obstacles are in the environment as we're designing those systems correctly. And then having that hydraulic model basically simulates an operating system. We can literally walk the homeowner through a wildfire event on their property without even, doing one bit of work. So we
Hmm.
created a process to, validate everything that our system represents and allow the homeowner to see it even before he makes his decision. It's a big investment that we made monetarily, but in this case of the trust that comes with protecting somebody's residential property, their home, this is in a lot of cases, it's their biggest asset that they have,
Hmm.
especially if it's a generational property. These things are very important. So we just can't say that we can do it. We owe it to the homeowner to prove it before we actually install the system.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we talked a little bit about insurance. I'm just wondering, are there collaborations or partnerships that you foresee in the future where it's kind of a natural part of the overall fire protection model for a homeowner, maybe with a vegetation specialist who'd say, I've done everything I can do, but your next step would be to talk to FyreShield. Do you see that kind of synergy in the future?
Absolutely. Man, you just keep taking me back to a red sky here continuously. Just like a good example of synergies is kind of like what BurnBot's doing.
Mm,
BurnBot is more of the macro component of wildfire mitigation, and everything that they're doing. Anapol is really onto some amazing things, and the value that his product can bring can allow those things to be done at a cost-effective rate, which basically it protects the community around the community where we're a component within the community. So we're kind of like the micro solution, and BurnBot is more of like a macro solution.
mm.
So there, I see a lot of synergies that are happening, within um, our work environments per se.
So, from being at Red Sky and hearing all the innovations there, has it brought to mind any new features that you plan to add or innovations that you're going to start incorporating into your system in the future?
It's funny, we just get our feet on the ground and all of a sudden we're already into, system 2.0. Yes, that really is something where, you just can't sit on your laurels. Even if you have an amazing product out there, the environment that we're working with is continuously changing, and we're trying to do the same. Hopefully in early 2026, we will have a relationship with a very accredited university that will allow us to have long-term research areas to work and test with. And our next step is probably to try to come up with that system that is working within the 50 to 70 mile an hour wind speeds that we're
Mm,
getting with megafires. Right now, we're comfortable with where we are between 30 and 50 just because of our high volume. It works and it's validated for those wind speeds. But we know that these bigger megafires are creating bigger events, and we've heard of winds up to 100 miles an hour. So, when you're dealing with almost hurricane, it's like, what can we do? What's possible? And that's where our research is going to start working on new components that were built in other industries like agriculture. And now
mm.
we're going to specifically start adapting them to, the conditions that we have within our wildfire.
That's great. So, what message would you like to leave with communities, builders, innovators, anybody in this space who's looking to create fire adapted futures?
I would say, be open to everything that's going on, especially, the simple first steps of home hardening and zone zero. Zone zero is very controversial. We all understand that, but there's ways that we can be creative with that and not feel that we're creating a demilitarized zone around the house with that 5 feet. It's like if we actively work with the landscape architecture community, they're going to show us that it's not as bad as you think. And we already know that we won't put a sprinkler head directly up a house. We'll push that back 3 feet to, you know, to prohibit damage to the house. We're only talking an additional 2 feet. So theoretically, we know we can adapt to 3 feet. So we just need to be open to those thought processes of the best applications. And zone zero is very important to that and the home hardening. So start with those, work your way through the low fruit. When it gets to a point where you still need help, we'll always be there for you.
Wow. Well, this was a great conversation about an innovative and practical solution to one of the toughest challenges in wildfire resilience: how to actively protect property when fire's already on the move. Greg, thanks for joining me today. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate being here.
To learn more about FyreShield Solutions, visit FyreShield Solutions, and that's FYRE Shield Solutions, to see their wildfire defense systems in action, learn how they can provide a customized solution, and see more information about their tech in action. If you enjoyed this episode, follow Neal on Fire in your favorite podcast platform and share it with someone interested in wildfire tech and preparedness. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more conversations with the people bringing wildfire innovation to life.